Hello and welcome back to the Fight and Talk 2 channel with myself, Mr. Fight and Talk, joined as always by the eloquent analyst, Prath over there. How are we doing, sir?
Doing good, man. I'm doing good. How you doing?
Good, man. I'm okay. We are joined with a very special guest for us today. We have Josh from Annex Kryptonite. How are we doing, Josh?
I'm right, mate. And yourself?
All good, man. All good. So why Annex Kryptonite? What does it mean? Tell us the story behind that.
So I've always been a big fan of John Anik. My favourite commentator of all time probably got to be Goldie. But you know, that ship sailed. But yeah, Anik's always been up there for me, and I felt like he's not really got the recognition that he kind of deserves, along with the platforms of like your Rogans and things like that. So yeah, that was just kind of like the reason behind it. I thought, if I was gonna do an account on anybody, it would probably be Anik, because I just like the way he's always called things. I think he's fair, no bias ever really, calls the fight how it's supposed to be. So that's my reasoning behind it. So Anik, if you're watching, make sure to give me that follow.
Always pushing for it. Well, we obviously had UFC 260 yesterday, and it was a fantastic card. To be honest with you, from top to bottom, it was very, very good. Although it was a shorter card, we're used to a pay-per-view obviously being kind of around the 13 to 15 fight mark. This was, I think, 10 or 11 fights, but it was just the main card, and some of the prelims as well was just littered with finish after finish after finish. It really kept everyone engaged, especially for the UK fans. We obviously lost an hour yesterday, so 1 o'clock quickly became 2 o'clock, and then the main event quickly became 5 o'clock in the morning. So it was good to be kept awake with such fantastic fights throughout the evening. Josh, you liked the Nurmagomedov fight, right? We all expected this to go to the ground and him to kind of rely on his wrestling and stuff like that, but he managed to piece up good and on the feet. What did you see, and what did you take away from that fight?
Very good mentality. That's the first thing. I'm not too sure what commentator said it. I think it might have been DC. They said that the minute that he kind of started MMA, came to UFC, he was a predominant wrestler. Now, stand-up wasn't really a big thing. And then you see, you look at Islam, you look at Umar, and obviously, Akbar as well, that fought last night. And with the things that Gooden was saying as well, in the pre-fight build-up, he was saying, he likes to hook onto legs and, things like that and stuff. I just felt like Nurmagomedov basically said, okay, then if that's what you think, then we'll see how our stand-up is. Felt like he did really well, worked well behind the jab. Didn't overdo it with a lot of combinations, which is what I liked, mixed it up, kept it very diverse. I liked a lot from what I seen from Nurmagomedov last night. I felt like his mentality was right. And especially stand up with someone like Gordon, because he's a slick boxer, he's known for his movement and things like that. But hats off to Nurmagomedov, man. He looks a serious problem.
Yeah, definitely. He looked very, very good. And I think that whole camp and that kind of, as you say, one of the commentators said it as well about that whole Dagestani kind of clan that have kind of almost entered the UFC and obviously Bellator and stuff. I just, as soon as you hear someone, you hear that name and you think, wow, they're going to be good. But obviously that puts a lot of pressure on these people as well, right? There's a lot of pressure on the fighter coming in, thinking, right, I'm coming in and I'm fighting a guy from Dagestan. I'm fighting a Nurmagomedov, for instance, who has that kind of name that comes with it. It just must be so much pressure. But a name that I'm not going to pronounce, but Prath is going to pronounce, because it's not the easiest. I'm going to call him Michal, because that's his name, right? You were obviously very impressed with Bukauskas versus Michal yesterday. Michal's his head movement, he was all over the place. Slick, very, very slick. Tell me what you took away from that fight.
Man, just massive improvements. Michelle Oleksiejczuk showed improved head movement, great pressure all the way through the fight. I'm very high on Modestas Bukauskas. I think he is one of the better British prospects we have in those heavier divisions. And it was a close fight, very, very close fight. But I will kind of say that I felt like Modestas kind of took that last round, which probably would have led to him getting the split decision. But obviously the judges are the judges. Nothing that we can really do about that. But I will say that Oleksiejczuk had an incredible fight, great head movement, great pressure, great hands. I didn't see too much feet. I didn't see too much leg, I didn't see too much head kicking. I didn't see much wrestling. I think that's kind of the hallmark of the fan-friendly style of fighting that people kind of look for. Modestus was, I felt like a little bit waiting for a big shot to then to land something. It felt like he was waiting for something all night long. And Michel just did what he needed to do, man. He went forward, he pressured him, he kept peppering up with jabs and hooks, and was able to just kind of get through his guard. And what I found was Modestus was doing a lot of circling off of Michel's left side. I think Michel's left hand was the one that was the troublemaker. And so, but he almost kind of turned away from him as he was kind of circling around. And that kind of led to Michel landing a couple of shots on the exits as well. So great work from him. And I'm looking forward to seeing him matched up against maybe a top 15 light heavyweight. And let's move this gentleman up. He seems like he's a bit of a shyer personality, and I kind of dig that usually. I like Jonathan Martinez. Jonathan Martinez is one of my favorite bantamweight fighters, and he has, like, when you ask him a question, he kind of almost shells up. And I felt that a little bit when I was watching Michel do his post-fight interview. But yeah, it seems like a great guy, and he's got a great attitude, and he's what you love in a fighter. He's going forward. He's got great head movement. He's got great jabs. He's coming to fight.
Yeah, definitely. Absolutely, man. Another guy that came to fight was Manafield. Wow. He is a absolute specimen of a man. He's got muscles on top of muscles. His neck has got a neck. I didn't know what was going on. You know, the guy is humongous. Usually when we have these bigger fighters and these very muscular fighters, they're very, very limited to kind of a round and a half. But obviously, he didn't even need it. He did not even need it. He came out there and obviously got the Von Flue choke, also known as the Over St. Preux choke as well. And it was just absolutely fantastic. Fair play to Sharon for coming in on a couple of days' notice, obviously missing weight ever so slightly, which is very unfortunate that he obviously had that 20% deduction in his pay as well. I think that's a kind of loophole that needs to be closed in the UFC, because if someone's coming in with 2 or 3 weeks notice, let them off for that, like half a pound, I think it was in the end, you know, just leave it. Do you know what I mean? But he obviously jumped into a guillotine, right? Which we thought, wow, this looked deep. You know, Prath, you're the BJJ guy here, and it looked very, very deep. He was well in on the guillotine there, but then he had his hands clasped, and then obviously when he went to the ground, the top pressure from Manafield was just absolutely humongous, wasn't it? Prath, what could he have done to get out of that Von Flue choke, or was he just completely finished by then?
Let go of the guillotine, which was his biggest problem there. So he kind of got the head in the choke position. He kind of jumped up into almost like he jumped into his guard on Manafield, and Manafield did the absolute perfect right thing to do, which is to slam him into side control. Obviously, you want to get him down and you want to kind of pass to the side control, whichever way you want to do it. And Manafield did it with style points. He slammed him to the side, gets the side pressure, and from there on, you can kind of see him kind of work to get the hands behind the back of Charant, and then started leaning in with that shoulder pressure. You could actually hear his coaches saying for him to go for the Von Flue choke. And so I don't know if it was his corner or the opposite corner telling him to watch out for the Von Flue choke, but I heard someone call it out, and as soon as it was called out, he just kind of snatched it up straight away. And there's nothing you can really do once you're. The thing is, even if he let go of the neck at that point, he still would have had Manafield's shoulder deep into his throat. And I think at that point, there's nothing you can really do. He's already given up the position. He's already given up his neck to be exposed to that shoulder. And at that point, there's not much that you can do. But if there was at any of the points where Fabio really could have made a difference, it was when he got slammed. He would have had to let go of that guillotine, because he held on to it. Manafield was able to shift his weight. And then once he had his hands behind Charant's back, it was game over. Beautiful submission, man. Beautiful submission. There's another beautiful submission coming up on this card that I'm very, very, I love a lot. So that was another two very unique submissions on this card. I think, it's not your usual guillotines or rear naked chokes. These are two very niche submissions, I would say. Not a lot of people go for them, especially when they're on the ground. See a lot of guys that, once they're being guillotined, they go to the side control. Not a lot of the guys actually even bother going for that Von Flue choke, that shoulder pressure. They kind of opt to get up or to, do damage from side control. So really awesome to see him have the smarts to know where he is positionally, listen to his coaches and execute. That's the hallmark of an incredible fighter, that listening to their coaches.
Yeah, definitely. Josh, where do you see Manafield going from here then? Obviously, fantastic win last night. He's clearly got the skills to pay the bills in the future, right? So who do you see him matched up against next,
I think it's a tough one. Personally, I don't know, man. I'd like to see him fight a legit top 10 guy. And the only reason why I say that is because I feel like he's got skill set. I really do. I feel like, he looked good on the feet. He looked good wherever it went on the ground, felt comfortable. I think is the key word, shall I say. I can't really pick a name, but I would like to see a top 10 guy because I feel like he matches well with all of them. I feel a top 10 guy would be good, and then see where we go from there. I feel like if he beats a top 10, maybe top 15 guy, he's definitely within a shout of, maybe even a top 5 guy in the future. Give him someone who's got full camp, 6 weeks or whatever, see what he can do there. And then I feel like from there is when we really start talking about what he can do in the division.
Yeah, definitely. One of the bigger underdogs on the card last night was obviously Jamie Malarkey, who came out against Karma Worthy and had an absolutely fantastic performance and a beautiful knockout as well. It was one of them knockouts that just, it didn't need too much power. It was just perfect precision. It was a beautiful left hook. And, Karma Worthy just kind of froze. We all saw him kind of freeze up a little bit. He looked at the ground and then it was just, he just slowly kind of tipped forward. And I thought, what's going on here? Is he dead? I don't know. But it obviously just completely just shocked his equilibrium and just completely put him to sleep while he was on his feet, really. Fantastic performance from Malarkey as well, man. He came out there, he looked ferocious, looked very, very good. And that was a big upset of the night as well. Obviously, the poor guy's got to go back to Australia, I believe it is. And then he has to quarantine for like another 3 weeks after he's back there. He didn't take any damage yesterday. So I don't see why these guys, especially the kind of Australian, New Zealand kind of fighters, they could be staying in Vegas, man. Stay busy. He took no damage yesterday. Stay busy. But Prath, where do you see him going next? Because everyone was really pitched up on Worthy getting the win there. But Malarkey came out and proved everyone wrong, But where do you see him going in the division?
Man, that's a tough question. I would love to obviously see him against kind of like a fringe 15 to 20 lightweight. I haven't got them in front of me, so I'm not too sure. Number 15 on this lightweight list is Gregor Gillespie, and I think Gregor Gillespie give this poor fella some real hard work. So I don't know if he's ready for that 15 up at the moment. One thing I will say that I really liked and appreciated out of Jamie Malarkey was that he had Brad Riddell in his corner. His former opponent from his first fight in the UFC was Brad Riddell, and he had Brad Riddell in his corner this time around. And I think that's just it's kind of like when you saw Overeem fight Curtis Blades and then train with Curtis Blades afterwards. I think that's really, really awesome. It's one of the things that you love about MMA, that people are getting together, taking a loss on the chin like that, because that was a tough fight. I don't know if you've seen Brad Riddell versus Jamie Malarkey. That was actually a very, very good fight, very tough fight for both guys as well. So I'm sure that they left that octagon with so much respect for each other that it's led Jamie Malarkey down to that city kickboxing camp. And it looks like he also had one of Volkanovski's coaches in his corner as well. So, that shows diversity in his team. He's willing to put himself out there, work with these different teams and get better and better. And I thought he looked great in his first fight against Brad Riddell. So, improvements are needed and were taken. And that's what you really saw here. He face planted Karma Worthy, man. And Karma Worthy all week had been talking about how disrespected he felt about Michael Chandler coming into the division and taking that top spot. And Karma Worthy went out there and got slept. I hate to say it because I want to see these guys do well, but you can't be talking all of that and then come into the fight and then that happens to you. So he's going to have to eat a little slice of humble pie, sit back and take his licks, because that was a tough one to watch as well. And I think that's one of those knockouts that really sits with someone for a long time. So I'm hoping that defensively he gets a bit better. It looks like he was kind of open to taking those strikes as well. Hand positioning near the face and things of that nature. I'm just an armchair quarterback, right, as they call it. But those are some of the things that I saw in the fight that I felt like he could have improved on. And Jamie Malarkey, the sky's the limit for this guy. I think he is 1 or 2 fights away, maybe from getting a top 10, 15 guy. And I'd love to see his trajectory, and I would love to see him to keep taking wins here, keep taking souls, and let's move him up this lightweight division.
Absolutely, man. He looked very, very good. And he is one of the palest Australian people I think I've ever seen in my life.
With the best last name, Malarkey. It's just like, it's full of malarkey, mate.
Exactly that.
I reckon he must be Scottish or Irish or something. You cannot have a name like that and be that pale and not and not be from.
And he's from Australia. How can you be that pale and be from Australia? That doesn't make sense.
Doesn't. He must need to get out on the beaches a lot more because there's something not wrong there. Something not right. I'm telling you.
Maybe he's spending too much time in camp, as we can see. He's spending too much time locked behind the doors of the gym, and it is paying off. If I was that pale and that good a fighter, man, it'd be a small price to pay. A small.
Yeah,
price.
I agree. Most definitely.
The UFC is very big on pushing the younger fighters at the moment, especially in the female divisions, which are obviously a little bit lighter. These women's divisions are not. When you look at the lightweight division, the middleweight division and stuff like that, we have a lot of fighters that are all pushing for that number 1 spot. And the top 15 of those divisions just stacked from 145 all the way up to even to heavyweight. Do you know what I mean? There's just so many fighters in the males division, but in the women's divisions, we're still kind of hung up on it being kind of like those 5 or 6 names that we all know. The Rose Namajunas, Andrade, Holly Holm, these kind of people, you know what I mean? Amanda Nunes, they're the names that everyone knows. But yesterday we saw Maverick come out and she looked very, very good. We were talking just before we hit record there. She's got very, very thick thighs. You can tell she's very muscular. She's got guns. I'm not even going to call them guns. She's got cannons, man. Cannons in her arms. And she was up against a lady who's no scrub. Do you know what I mean? In Robertson, sorry. She is no scrub at all. I thought that was a very, very good performance. And what I liked to see as well was Maverick, when she had Robertson on the ground, she was working the body with the knees as well. It's a very, very underutilized strike that we just don't see that much. It's similar to the Das, similar to the Von Flue. People just don't go for it. So when Robertson was kind of in a baby pose on the ground and Maverick was just going for the body with the knees, it's just beautiful to see, using a complete skill set and a complete striking range. But fantastic performance from that young lady out there. But what did you take away from the fight, Josh? How did you see that going? Obviously, a lot of MMA Twitter is against the female fighters for some strange reason. But tell me what you saw.
All I'd say is watch the fight last night from the women's card and then come back to me. That's what I'd say. I feel like Maverick came out and showed that she wasn't just the looks, I'd say. I feel like Gillian Robertson is, she's lanky, good at range and stuff. She's good with the jab and stuff. But I feel like Maverick was just a different beast out there last night. A physique does help. Don't get me wrong. But it'd help anybody with that physique. You know what I mean? It's freakish. It's kind of like an Amanda Nunes type physique. It's kind of like different that we've ever seen in the women's division before, I kind of say. Maybe excluding Ronda Rousey. But yeah, she was really good last night. Like I say, kind of like Nurmagomedov, everywhere the fight went, she looked comfortable. And especially getting inside a lanky fighter like Robertson, who's very good utilising that range. I was very impressed.
And she managed to stay very, very calm in the on the ground as well. Obviously, the second round, a lot of the judges still gave her the round, which I thought was surprising, considering she spent most of it with a backpack on. But Prath, she obviously stayed very, very calm during the second round, while there were constant kind of bulldog chokes and rear naked choke attempts and stuff like that. And even just, we all know, having a forearm grind from a back position, it's not fun for anyone. Do you know what I mean? But what did you take away from the calmness that she had on the ground there?
Yeah, composure.
Oh, sorry, no, bad. Sorry. I apologize. Sorry.
I was just gonna say, she really lived up to her nickname, which is Fear the Maverick. She calm, composed on the ground. She was able to eat a lot of the strikes, able to defend a lot of the chokes. I want to say there was a fight, Kai Kara France, who in that same sense was eating a lot of those kind of chokes, getting pounded on the ground, but managed to ride it out and then come back and composure and win. and I think that was it. She seems extremely strong, and even when she was in a compromised position, she kept herself composed. She was able to defend everything that Gillian was kind of throwing at her, which is no easy task because Gillian Robertson is legit on the ground, and I know she's choked quite a few of the gals in the division so far. So for her to survive that and get through it, I think will really kind of bolster the fans' feelings about her. She's 23 years old. That's so crazy. And Julia Robertson was only 25 years old. Like these women are, still in the stages of blooming into a full blown, fighter with technique and aggression and all of these things. But it's incredible to see. Gillian Robertson as well, I want to say, had the most fights in women's fights so far. I think they made that stat. I can't remember exactly what weight classes, if it was across the weight classes or things of that nature. But I remember them saying that she has more fights in that division than most of the other girls as well, which is great to see her using that opportunity to fight in the UFC, constantly improve her skills. But she ran into a brick wall with thick thighs, and Miranda was able to implement her game in the third round as well. She was able to really kind of fend her off and kind of cruise to a bit of a decision victory there. I think, the fans are always really wanting these guys to come out with the finishes. And she does seem like someone that will be a prolific finisher. But I think it takes those fights against those Gillian Robertsons and those real tough, I don't want to call her a veteran, but like she kind of feels like a veteran at this point. I feel like I've been watching Gillian Robertson for years and years and years. And she needs those tough fights against those guys that are extremely accomplished on the ground. She could show her full skill set. She was throwing great strikes. She was having good wrestling. And these are the things that you need to see out of a real good top 15 fighter in the female divisions. So really impressed. It's actually one of my standout fights in terms of action throughout the fight. There was a couple that were really good, like the Abubakar Nurmagomedov fight. But for me, I thought Miranda Maverick showed some real skill, some heart, and to survive that second round was something else, because a lot of people would have folded under that pressure. So for her to get that composure and know that, okay, these were compromising positions, but I'm not going to give up. I think that really speaks to her character, and I think that's one of the things that are going to make the fans really love her going forward. So I'm hoping that they give her a bit of a more favorable matchup. Not saying that Gillian Robertson maybe wasn't a favorable matchup for her, but I think they need to match her up against girls that she's going to get wins over that are impressive, because it does feel like that she's one of those next girls that are really going to get the rocket strapped to her back and lifted up and seen here. I think she came off of the Contender Series as well. So I know Dana White loves to promote those guys and show that his series really works. Come watch my series because it really works. Look at Sean O'Malley, look at Miranda Maverick. And so she's going to get the rocket strap, but I want to see some more favorable matchups for her. Throwing her Julia Robertson was rude, and that was a tough fight, but she survived it and came through it. So respect.
Absolutely, man. Absolutely. Josh, what did you see, man? You had something to say just then.
No, I mean, it perhaps just really, summed that up. I think one thing I could say personally is, it's kind of like an Amanda Ribas, Macy Barber type situation. And I wouldn't want to see her go in straight away into a kind of like a top 10 fight. I don't want to see, like I say, another Macy situation or Ribas or anything. So I feel like it's a good job so far. Like I say, Gillian Robertson's no slouch at all. And especially with that ground games being so long, so lanky, being able to, throw different types of submissions and transitions. So yeah, wouldn't want to see her go straight in yet, but looking very impressive. She's definitely one to look out for sure.
Yeah, absolutely, man. Absolutely. Another person that looked very impressive last night. We love to hate him, and I think we hate to love him. Do you know what I mean? This guy's probably got as many haters as he has got fans. You know what I mean? It's Sugar Sean O'Malley. He looked very, very good yesterday. He looked super composed. I thought he was fading off a little bit in the later parts of the second round. He looked like he was opening his mouth a little bit more. He almost looked like he was frustrated, I think, in the second half of the second round, if that makes sense. But what was going on? Why did he not finish the fight when he had the opportunity? He caught Almeida with a massive head kick. He caught him with some fantastic punches, finished the fight. Do you know what I mean? The finishing instinct just wasn't there from him. I think DC hit the nail on the head when he said all of these kids just want to get the walk-off knockout, the power of social media and going viral and all this kind of stuff. They want to get that one punch walk-off and everyone, you know, goes crazy about it for a couple of days. But I think that's a very immature way of looking at it. If that was Sean O'Malley's kind of vision for what he wanted to do. But Prath, what did you see yesterday in Sean O'Malley that makes you think that this guy is an absolute contender for the future and is going to be a champion one day? Because he's obviously got the confidence to kind of bolster behind him, but do you think he's got all the skill set to make sure he is? Obviously, he looked very compromised with his ankles, and in the post-fight presser, he made a few comments about having dodgy ankles, dodgy knees, and these kind of things. But then on the other hand, he kind of defends himself on having these things. But where do you think he goes, and how high do you think his ceiling is?
Oh, how high is his ceiling is a tough question to answer, because I really feel like we're really only seeing surface level Sean O'Malley. From what I saw yesterday, I think the thing that really sets him apart is his striking. I hate to give you the obvious answer here, but it looked very next level compared to what I've seen from these other fighters. And not to shade on anyone. I think everyone, you know, there are guys in there that have really unique striking styles that are very good for themselves. Like, you know, Dominic Cruz, for instance, very unique style to himself. And I think Sean O'Malley is kind of, in a way, he reminds me of early John Jones striking in the way that he's very creative. He's throwing a lot of spinning attacks, but he's setting them up with beautiful feints. You know, the look away, you kind of did like a look away and then come back. And I thought that was a really good feint. And that was designed to make Thomas Almeida afraid of the spins. And he threw a few spinning techniques, one to the body, one to the head, that landed very, very nicely as well. So that for me was what really made me stand out. Made him stand out for me. I love the front leg side kicks to the knee that he was throwing as well. I think that is an incredibly underutilized technique. That is a devastating technique. Imagine if you're standing in front of someone and you throw a front leg side kick someone whilst they're just standing up straight, you'll basically break their leg in half. And I think that's something that not many people in the UFC use a lot. And I would love to see more people implement it. And I think people, you know, John Jones has given it a bad rap, unfortunately, because of the amount of damage he's done to a lot of these fighters over the years. But they're in a fist fight at the end of the day, so you got to use everything you can to get yourself out of there. And I think Sean O'Malley is now very, very he's recognized now that people are just going to go after his legs, people are going to leg kick him, people are going to kick his ankles, people are going to kick his calves, right? So he needs to find a way of being able to stop their forward momentum, and the best way of doing that is throwing front kicks, leg kicks in general. He threw a couple of real brutal leg kicks as well that made, you know, Almeida spin as well, which is not something you see a lot of out of him. He's just throwing, you know, kicks to the head, kicks to the body, spinning kicks, punches. That's usually what he throws. So it's really awesome to see him add another tool to his arsenal. And I think that's really is what's going to make him stand out from the rest. Man, I love the finishing combination as well, was incredible. Hit him, Almeida kind of rolled onto the ground and then just hit him with like the biggest shot I've ever seen in my life to a grounded opponent. He looks like he threw that from another area code, and Thomas Almeida's head hit off the ground. He almost went through the octagon, it felt like anyway. And I know Josh was saying to us that there was a clip of the ringside of that, and you can just hear the reverberations, which I don't even want to hear it because it'll make me feel sick. And I'm sure Thomas Almeida is feeling a lot of sick right now, headaches and whatnot from that. What a warrior. I got to give Thomas Almeida his credit. He took a lot of shots there. He could have got finished from that head kick, but he stood right back up. I respect that a lot, because he could have just sat there and taken the TKO loss there and gone about his day. But he got himself back up. He got composed very, very quickly. Before the end of the round, he was already composed, which is very, very tough in that situation, because he's still fielding shots from Sean O'Malley as well. So massive respect to Thomas Almeida. But wow, what a performance by Sean O'Malley. His ceiling is untapped, man. I really, really can't answer that question right now. I feel like that's a question that you can really ask in the next 2 years, right? Sean O'Malley is still only 26 years old. So he has got plenty of improving and plenty of growing to do before he hits his real prime of his career. Prime for me is kind of like 29 to 32, 33, I would say is their kind of prime ages, where we've seen a lot of these guys have success. So yeah, if he keeps adding to his arsenal like he is now, from his last fight to this fight, I felt like the striking style was much different. I wouldn't say the Cheeto fight, because you didn't really see a lot in that fight apart from him getting kicked in his legs a bunch. Eddie Wineland was the one before that, and I felt like it was not a completely different striking style, but he added like 3 or 4 different tools to his skill set, and which I really appreciate. When you come to these fights, you need to bring different things. You can't come in as the same fighter over and over again and expect to get different results. You need to come in with different angles. You need to come in with different, he was switching stances, which I know he does a lot anyway, but his right hand, I would say, is his more power hand, but he was fighting a lot of southpaw in that fight because I felt like he wanted to mix it up and show he has different angles to his fighting style. Incredible and impressive.
Very much so. And I think one of the takeaway points for Thomas Almeida for me was obviously the fact that he did get up. He did get up and he composed himself very, very quickly, as you mentioned. But I just don't think he got the memo with the fact that he could throw feints. Everything he threw was completely telegraphed. He wouldn't set up. It's the first thing you learn. As soon as you start doing Muay Thai, you always hide your kicks behind your jabs and behind your punches. 1-2, hook, low kick, whatever. Do you know what I mean? Do something to kind of hide the fact that you're about to kick the guy in the leg. But it was almost like he stood straight up, chin in the air as he was moving backwards. But then as he was coming in, hands were up. He'd look at O'Malley's leg and then try and kick it. Whereas Sean O'Malley was just either checking, moving backwards. It was just very, very... It's a shame when we don't see these elite level fighters implementing the basics. Implementing those basic skills that you learn on the first day of any sort of combat, any sort of striking sport. Where does Thomas Almeida go from here, Josh? He obviously hasn't won a fight in 6 years, I believe it is. He's on a 4-fight skid. Where does he go from here, and what can he do to get himself back into the division?
It's going to be really hard, man. I don't see. For me, it's like I was saying, I was talking to Mitch before about it. The Garbrandt fight was massive. I think he was like 21-0 before that Garbrandt fight. Came in, was a favourite, and then obviously got knocked out, and ever since then it's kind of been a bit of a a downhill struggle. For a name, I'd probably say like, is John Dodson still in the UFC, or has he been released? Is John Dodson still signed?
I think he's been released.
Has he been released? My bad.
I'm fairly sure.
I don't know if he's been released. And I would say Dodson. I would have said Dodson because, like I say, I mean, he's kind of not the same fighter that he once was. I kind of see that being a fight where it's kind of like, it's either me or you out the door. I want to prove that I've got another shot at this, because if I can win this now, maybe get another 1 or 2 fights, 1 or 3 fight win streak, completely like a Masvidal, kind of just completely turn it around and just, I wouldn't really know for a name because I don't know the top 15 off the top of my head, so that's my bad. But I'd like to see him stick around because, like I say, he's still young and he's got a nice skill set, and I'd like to see more from him. Definitely, I feel like if he can get his mentality right and kind of revert back to his old ways before, he fought Garbrandt, kind of like look back and see, right, that's what I was doing right. This is what's, kind of like, led me to go down this path. Just positivity in his mindset. I feel like that's going to be 2 massive things to keep at this, because it'd be a shame to see him pack it in at such an early age or be let go as well. So I like him, man. I hope he comes back.
Absolutely, man. Prath, any numbers over there? I can see you looking at the screens, right?
I was just looking at the top 15 of the bantamweight division to see who would be a good matchup for Sugar Sean O'Malley. And number 15 is Marlon Vera. And I hate to say that we need to run something back, but I feel like with the amount of crap that Sean O'Malley has been talking about the fact that he didn't think that he lost that fight, from a skill perspective, I lost the fight, I got a number on my record or whatever, but he feels like, spiritually he didn't lose the fight. Hey man, let's chuck him in there with Marlon Vera. Let's chuck him in there. I think the other guy that's the other 2 guys. So Marlon Vera being at 15, number 14 being Kyler Phillips, who's coming off of a great fight. The Matrix, I believe, is his nickname. Great fighter. And the other one being Cody Stamann. I think Cody Stamann will just out wrestle O'Malley. and just kind of ground him and kind of hold him down for 3 rounds. So out of those, I would probably say for me, Sean O'Malley versus Marlon Vera, even though I feel like it's a legit win for Marlon Vera. I think that a lot has been taken away from him because of the amount that Sean O'Malley's been talking and kind of disputing things, if you will. But there is no disputing that he, for me, I felt like when Marlon landed that last shot on the ground, he put him out. He put him out with that last shot, even though the leg kicks were there. He was damaging with the leg kicks. He dropped him with the leg kicks. The last shot that he hit him on the ground with put him out. Whether he likes to admit that or not is irrelevant. From an actual standpoint, he got knocked out in that one moment. So if that's the case, I want to see him fight Marlon.
That's it. Run it back. Why not, man? Run it back and then let him get that, the Sugar Sean, what did he say? The Sugar Sean Athletic Commission or something. Do you know what I mean? It's very, very good marketing. Do you know what I mean? Very, very good marketing that someone so young can have so many different kind of views and aspects of looking at things to turn it all into his own positivity. He's obviously loved and equally as hated by a lot of people for various different reasons. The older kind of MMA fans, like, me and Prathy, we were talking about this last week with regards to him talking about heroin and stuff while he's on a podcast, while he's holding his kid, stuff like that. You think, really? Whereas, I don't know, the 16 to 20-year-olds, maybe they're looking at it and going, oh, wow, look, he's cool. He's got colorful hair. So it's for him as well. It's just about turning these things into positives, and moving forward in a positive light for him as well, which is going to boost his career in the future. He's still a very, very young guy. He's very marketable to that kind of age group as well, and bringing on new people into the MMA community, which is good. I don't like kind of slandering any kind of fighter that's just going out there and putting the work in. Do you know what I mean? Which brings us to someone that we've seen put in the work a few years ago when he was the champion. But since it's very unfortunate, I was always a very, very big Tyron Woodley fan many years ago when he was the champ. And even before he was the champ, he had some fantastic fights, uppercuts from hell. If you look at kind of UFC highlights of all time, he's there. He's in the mix with numerous kind of knockouts, a fantastic wrestling background as well. But it was nice to see Woodley come out yesterday and really put the gas on. He came out and he looked the most kind of gun willing that he's ever looked in such a long time against Vicente Luque. And it's very, very unfortunate that he's decided to do this after losing 4 fights in a row. If he'd have come out and been a bit more gun heavy and a bit more kind of attack heavy in his past couple of fights, we might have seen a different route for him. Whereas he's let himself get to a point now, he's 38, which is not old. He's not an old person, but in the fight game, a very, very well-known phrase in the fight game is fighting is a young man's sport, or fighting a young person's sport, I think you should be saying now to be politically correct. But Josh, tell me, man, what did you see from Woodley that you'd like to see more of in the future? Or do we see him retire here? He hasn't really got anything else to prove. He's been the champ. He's on I think this is a 4 or 5 fight loss streak now. He hasn't won since he beat Darren Till in a Darce choke, which was at a lower weight division. Darren Till was obviously cutting to get that division as well. Where do we see Tyron Woodley go from here, Josh, man? And what did you like from his fight yesterday?
The start of it straight away. He came out, looked not like he meant business. I think he actually wrote a tweet saying that imagine if he just comes out now and does a cost check on Luque, which from the get-go it kind of looked like it might have been a possibility. But Luque looked kind of confusingly strong. I mean, you look at Woodley, and you wouldn't say people have much fighters in UFC, pardon me, have got a better physique than Woodley. And it looked like that when Woodley went in with a overhand from the get-go, Luque kind of pressed him up against the clinch against the cage, reverse position, and was kind of holding him there for about a good minute and a half. And obviously, the minute they broke, that's when it obviously started up again. Woodley landed that overhand right, kind of stumbled Luque. Luque comes back, he drops Woodley, but looking back at the replay, it actually looked better in real time. When you look back at the replay, it doesn't actually look like Luque lands that much. And Woodley just lost it. I think it's father time, I feel like You know, Woodley, when he's champion, you know, you look at the shots that he took against Thompson and, you know, the adversity that he went through against that, you know, in both fights. And, you know, like the first punch that kind of Luque kind of landed, that was it. You know, his legs were gone. He looked like, you know, he just looked gone. But credit to him, didn't have to take the fight even after Usman, really. He's taken 3 fights against killers. I mean, Burns and Covington and, you know, Luque are absolute monsters, man. You know, like you can't get any easier fights. So from now, I do think that's it. You know, you've been UFC champion. You've defended it 3 times, if I'm not mistaken. There's not really much you can do now unless you want a paycheck. So unless he wants to go to Bellator or PFL, I'm hanging the gloves up, unfortunately.
Absolutely, man. And then Luque obviously had a fantastic performance. You know, we give credit to Woodley for looking the best that he's looked in a couple of fights. But if anything, it's almost like it's the wooden spoon, isn't it? Do you know what I mean? It's the thanks for turning up. Here's a certificate, but the other bloke got the medal here. The thing that I thought was very, very strange after the fight was Luque calling out Diaz. Why would you call out Nate Diaz? For what? Where's that going to get you? Why do you want to fight someone that's further, you know, he's behind you, man. He's behind you. You want to be fighting forward. Prath, why do you think he called out Nate Diaz? Obviously, it's for the money. We know it's for the money here, but who do you realistically see him getting matched up against that's going to get him closer to the belt? Because essentially, the closer up the chain you are, closer to the belt you are, the more money you're making per fight. So if you can stay around the top echelon of the division, the top, you know, first challenger to 1 to 5, instead of, you know, while you're not the champion, etc., you're going to be making a good amount of money per fight. So why call out someone that hasn't fought for so long and only fought Masvidal and then had the Conor trilogy and all this kind of stuff? But why? Why are these fighters doing it? Tell me, what's your take on it, brother?
One simple answer, man. To do with this color here. It's the green, my friend. Money rules all, unfortunately. And I think Vicente Luque looks at that fight, even though, you know, at the end of the day, it doesn't actually increase his paycheck in any way, shape, or form. It gives him a little bit more exposure because I think people will tune in to watch Nate Diaz fight in general. Even though he has a lot of losses, et cetera, et cetera. Nate Diaz is the guy, man. And Nate Diaz is an exciting fighter to watch. People love to watch him. People love the attitude. People love the edginess of Nate Diaz. But does Vicente Luque get Nate Diaz? I heavily doubt it. I heavily doubt it. I think Diego Sanchez has a better chance of fighting Nate Diaz than Vicente Luque, to be honest. When I'm looking at the top 10 of the division now going forward, and I just wanted to say as well, like what a beautiful anaconda choke he hit on Tyron Woodley. Obviously had him rocked, had him hurt so bad. Credit to Tyron Woodley for staying up, man. That first shot would have deaded most people. So for him to, you know, and he did look like he was out on his feet. So I don't want to put too much emphasis on it, but I think smart by Vicente Luque to go for the submission. He looked like, you know, he's hit him with like 10 shots that could have knocked him out, didn't knock him out. What's the next thing you can do? Go for the choke. And he's actually very much known for that anaconda choke. I think he's hit that on a few different people now. And what an incredible record this young man has as well. He's only lost to Stephen Wonderboy Thompson and Leon Edwards, the top, you know, 2 guys that are in the top 5, if that division, man. Otherwise, he's had wins, and he's had wins from 2015, and he's only lost twice. Apart from that, he's won every single fight, most of them by finishes, which is what I really love about Vicente Luque. I think he's one of those guys that just really hunts the finish from start to end. He will walk through the shots to take those chances to win, and I think that's what will make him stand out from the rest of the welterweight division. You know, when I look at Gilbert Burns doesn't seem like a guy that likes to get hit and come back and win. He likes to grind people out and go for a dominating victory or knock them out. Vicente Luque is looking to go out there and have a war with you. And so massive respect for that. Great submission as well. Great positioning. Followed Woodley all the way around. Did not let up on that submission at all for that entire time as well. You know, that's what Woodley was doing was the correct procedure in that situation, but his squeeze just must be so tight. Like it looks like he could have snapped Vicente Luque's arms off and he still would have had that choke in. Like that's how deep it looked. In terms of who he fights next, there isn't a whole heap of choices, unfortunately. Now he's beaten Tyron Woodley. Tyron Woodley is number 7 in the division. The only people above him are Michael Chiesa, Stephen Wonderboy Thompson, George Masvidal, Leon Edwards, Gilbert Burns, and Colby Covington, right? And I think a lot of these other guys are going to be matched up here. So there's 2 that really make sense for me for wanting to see Luke in. One of them will never happen because one of them is Gilbert Burns, and Gilbert Burns was in this corner last night. So I doubt he fights him unless it's for a strap or something of that nature. So the other person that really looks likely for him to fight is Michael Chiesa. And I think that's a really good kind of middle ground. He's basically sits right in the middle of the division, and one more win over a ranked guy after that will kind of lead him to a title shot there. Who does he fight in that top 5? I don't see any of those guys agreeing to fight Vicente Luque. I don't see George Masvidal calling up Hunter and being like, hey, give me Vicente Luque, the finisher. It doesn't seem like that's going to happen. So I think Michael Chiesa is a good shout. Colby Covington's a good shout, but Colby Covington, again, very selective with who he wants to fight now, who he wants to have those performances against. And I think that's the same thing you'll see with the rest of these guys here. The only other guy that isn't like that is Gilbert Burns, and Gilbert Burns is not going to fight him because he's buddies with him. So that's where I see him going next.
It's very tight in that division as well. Obviously, at the beginning of the year, we saw Michael Chiesa fight Neil Magny, I believe it was, and we've already seen Gilbert Burns try and get the strap off of Usman, which is already done. Masvidal versus Usman 2, we're getting in a couple of weeks' time, I believe. So Woodley, Chiesa, Wonderboy.
Neil?
Are the kind of the... Say again, sorry, man?
So I didn't mean to interrupt. I was going to say Jeff Neal would actually kind of be a nice, interesting matchup I'd like to see.
Yeah, definitely. But would that be going backwards? Would that be more of a platform for Jeff Neal to kind of bounce off of Vicente Luque's kind of hype train, wouldn't it? It's difficult now, I don't think it's ever been as difficult in the recent years that I've been, in the many years that I've been watching the UFC and MMA in general. The divisions just seem so tight now. The kind of 5 to 7 mark is just super, super tight in all of these divisions. And it seems like they've all been matched up before. I think this year, especially, and towards the back end of this year, we're going to be seeing a lot of rematches, and there'll be a lot of these kind of like trilogy fights being put on as well, because people are they're going to have to be fighting the same people over and over again until we see some kind of breakthrough stars coming through. Which leads us perfectly to talking about the main event of the evening. Well, I think it was around 4:30 last night, or maybe 4:45, or this morning, should I say. Bruce Buffer came out and he shouted, "It's live, let's go." And I was jacked, man. The birds were singing outside. I was super psyched for this fight. Super, super psyched. It was great to see the respect from these two guys as well. Big handshakes when they walked in as well. Usually you just get a little touch of the gloves, but there's a lot of mutual respect there. It may not seem like a lot, but instead of going for a touch gloves now, having a nice handshake, it was very, very nice as a viewer as well to see the respect there. And Stipe had the respect for Francis's power in the first round, it would seem. Wow, that man can take a shot. I think I tweeted pretty much after the first round that Stipe's got a chin of absolute titanium, but unfortunately, Francis has hands of vibranium. This guy he was coming out with everything. It was just insane. It was insane to see Stipe take those shots. But the advancements in being a mixed martial artist from Francis Ngannou was absolutely phenomenal. Stuffing the takedown early on with the single leg that he was getting taken down with in the first fight, he managed to break the hands, stuff the head, sprawled straight outwards. And when you've got a guy that's 40 pounds heavier than you laying on your back, fair play to Stipe for standing straight up as well. He took a couple of licks when he was on the ground in the kind of fetal position, but he stood straight up. He took a couple of licks from the back, similar to how we saw Francis finish JDS, I believe it was. Obviously with them kind of like, he had the back to him and he was taking a lot of shots from the sides and stuff. It was just a crazy fight for as long as it lasted, man. I'm still very, very hyped about it. I watched it a good number of times, but Josh, what did you take away from the fight, and how do you see Francis going ahead from here? And who do you see? Who do you see in the future for Francis, especially?
It's a good question, man. The first take from it is obviously takedown defense. I said before the fight, Stipe is going to have so much trouble now, with Ngannou training Usman. Usman, D2 wrestler, very established and decorated wrestler himself. Probably, arguably, at the moment, the best in terms of mixing and matching, in my opinion. But just the whole package was there last night. He went into the first fight, basically just looked for Stipe's head for the first round and then kind of froze when he didn't know what to do after that. But this fight, we've seen everything. We've seen a takedown defense, the sprawl, the transitions, even the kicks going to the southpaw stance and throwing the roundhouse and things like that, keeping Stipe guessing. Just really, really good. Obviously, the knockout, scary. Kind of like an Alistair Overeem type knockout was just, not good to see, but good to see at the same time, But I think going forward, I think that's the biggest question. Do we want to see Jones? Do we want to see Lewis? Do we even want to see Blades again? Obviously with him being such a decorated wrestler, maybe not, because he's already won twice. Cyril Gaines in there with a shout. I think he's too inexperienced, sorry, yet though. I think he needs to bet a good 3 or 4 fights maybe before he gets to that position. But I feel that if Stipe would have won, I feel like it would have been Jones. But now that Ngannou's won, I'm feeling it more it's going to be Lewis. And I know it sounds crazy. I'd rather see Lewis Ngannou because Lewis is a proven heavyweight. I feel like I want to see Jones have just one fight at heavyweight, just one, and then go for it. But I can see him taking this Lewis rematch. I really kind of feel like it's going to be a barn brawler, both heavy hitters. And we all said before the first one that it can't fail. Well, I'm telling you now, this one will not fail because it cannot fail twice in a row, especially with 2 big punches like them guys. So I feel like that is the fight to see next. But with Francis and Ngannou, anything can happen and I'd be excited. So I'm looking forward to it. Absolutely,
man. Absolutely. And it was the patience as well. There was a lot of memes that I saw floating around on social media yesterday that was like, patient Ngannou beats everyone. He just, even when he had Stipe rocked, he kind of stepped back and he just kind of, was floating his arms. And it was glorious. It was just a glorious performance, and I've always said that I'm a big fan of fighting. I am not a fan of fighters, but last night, obviously hearing the backstory of Francis Ngannou as well on the JRE, it was just fantastic, phenomenal. The work that the guy does back in Africa as well is just a credit to him, and people will remember him for being such a stand-up bloke. They're going to remember him for putting his all into his fighting and giving everything back for his community as well. And I think that's so important for the younger fighters coming through the ranks as well, to have that kind of role model that you can look at and go, wow, this guy's doing so much inside of the octagon, and he's really finishing people and putting on a performance, as well as being just a good human being. Do you know what I mean? Just a good human being. A lot of people were also calling for the trilogy yesterday of a rematch, but I think when the first fight goes to a decision, you think, right, that wasn't the best of ways to win, and then you think, absolutely sublime kind of performance from Francis. Prath, are you kind of yearning for that trilogy to see who takes it 2-1, or do you think that this is kind of done now? Obviously, Francis himself said in the post-fight presser that he hasn't got anything left to prove, and for me personally, I don't want to see Stipe get knocked out again. I don't know. If we see him fight later in the year, he's going to be closer to 40 than he is to 38. Francis is obviously coming in and being a 34, 35-year-old fighter as well, which is the prime for heavyweight divisions. We see these fighters fight on too long and take these massive CTE punches later in life. But what do you think, man? Do you think trilogy? Where do you see him going from this? Where do you think Stipe goes from this, most importantly? And what was your take on the fight?
Ooh, where does Stipe go from this? Man, overall impressions of the fight, incredible performance by Francis Ngannou. I was saying to you guys, I've actually been off social media for the last couple of days, so I haven't seen that upsurge of patient Ngannou being the dangerous guy. But what I was saying to you guys was, Francis with takedown defense is the most dangerous person alive, and I think that might be one of the rhetorics that coming out of that event. What an incredible performance, patient, beautiful. The beautiful shot selection as well. Like he didn't just, he could have come in like he did against Rosenstrike and thrown like he threw like probably 20 punches at Rosenstrike and one of them landed and knocked him out. Like he could have done that if he wanted to, but instead he took his time. He was patient. He was he would hurt him, step back and reevaluate before going forward. And I think that is going to make him someone that's going to be very, very tough to defeat. Very, very, very tough to defeat. I don't think there's a lot of people in that division that are going to give him any trouble whatsoever. One of the people that does, as Josh mentioned, was Derrick Lewis. I think Derrick Lewis, hopefully, as you were saying that you wanted to see him fight Derrick Lewis, I was like, that was the impression that I had the first time around as well. And I remember gathering all my friends. I want to say it was the Conor Khabib card that those two gentlemen fought. Ngannou and Lewis. I remember sitting all my friends down. I had like a few friends come over. We were sitting down, a couple of casual fans, like George isn't here today, but he was there in spirit. And I sat my friends down and I was like, oh my God, this is going to be a barn burner. Watch out for destructions. Don't blink. And they all fell asleep. So what I don't want to happen is that happen again. But I got to agree with you. I don't think it happens a second time around. I think both guys know very much what they're both capable of. And I think it will be a little bit more I think it will be a tactical fight, but I think it will be a firefight nonetheless. Now, what happens with Francis in this situation is, I would love to see him fight Jones. I think everybody in the world would love to see him fight Jones. I think what we ultimately want to see is Jones get knocked out here. Not to say that Jones won't come in and have an incredible skill set that will challenge Francis, and that's what we want to see. No, what we want to see is John Jones move up to heavyweight, try his luck at heavyweight, but ultimately get destroyed by Francis Ngannou. And I think that is what I think a lot of the public are feeling. I obviously, again, haven't been online, so I haven't seen what the reaction has been. I know John was spitting some stuff on Twitter and talking about show me the money, and I want to get paid out here. I'm sure he's getting paid very good, but obviously to put yourself in the line of fire of a Francis Ngannou, it's like agreeing to go to war and having a gun just shoved immediately in your face as you get off the plane. And I think that's exactly what you sign up for when you fight Francis Ngannou. So John Jones, go get that money. I agree, go get that money. But Dana's a tough negotiator in these circumstances. So I do see Lewis probably getting the title shot here purely based off of John Jones just not budging in any way, shape or form in the negotiation process. Although I would love to see John Jones fight him, I just don't think John Jones is in a position now, especially coming off of the fights that he has had against Dominic Reyes and Thiago Santos, to be in any kind of bargaining position for money. I think if he came out and starched both Thiago Santos, starched Dominic Reyes, then we're talking about an entirely different fight here and an entirely different situation with John Jones. I think Dana White has recognized that John Jones is on the later part of his career. I wouldn't say, again, that he is a declining fighter in any way, shape or form. I would say that Dana White recognizes that he is in the later stages of career. And I don't think Dana is willing to play ball with someone who is being very tough to negotiate with. And you saw that's ultimately why Colby versus George Masvidal didn't get made. It's because he knows that, push or shove at the end of the day, he can give one of these guys a title shot and that'll shut the other guy up. And it will show that he has the power at the end of the day. And that's what you saw here with Dustin and Connor, Charles and Chandler, is that what happened was they couldn't come to terms with Colby and George, so they gave George Masvidal the title fight against Kamaru Usman to piss off Colby Covington. But now what we'll find here is that we're talking about, Vicente Luque, for instance, like Vicente Luque versus Colby Covington is an incredible fight, but I don't see Colby Covington taking that fight because he's very difficult to negotiate with. And I think that's what we're going to find here with John Jones as well. John Jones is not going to allow himself, and fair play to him. He has built himself into a position now where he is, widely touted as the greatest of all time. I think with Khabib coming through, Dana White has changed his perspective just a little bit on who he thinks is the greatest fighter of all time, but he gives him the respect. He gives him the respect knowing that, he isn't a journeyman fighter. He has won, all of his fights, bar the Matt Hamill fight, if you want to call semantics. But ultimately, Derrick Lewis gets the fight here. John Jones is tough to negotiate with. And Francis versus Derrick. Let's hope it's not a snooze fest.
I like it. And I think that it does come down to the money, really. At the end of the day, John Jones it's been very well documented that John Jones been kind of not bitching and whinging, but he's been kind of complaining that he hasn't been getting paid enough money, etc. But
bitching and whinging.
Yeah, for the years that he's been out of the sport for performance enhancing drugs, whether it be a picogram or a milligram or a liter, do you know what I mean? Driving into a pregnant lady, like the hit and runs. There's just so many things that we could say about his career that kind of plays down the fact that he can't be asking for loads of money when he has these tarnishes on his record, being matched up against DC and then getting done for PEDs and then having to move the entire, they moved an entire event into a different state so that they could fight. I just think that's so ridiculous that someone with so many kind of black marks against his name is able to push for more money. I think that's ridiculous. But someone as humble as Francis comes across as, and I'm sure he is as a person, he's going to fight whoever's in front of him. Whoever they put in front of him, he's going to fight him again. And the only thing we have with this heavyweight division is the top 6, for instance, they've all fought each other. There's not a lot of movement there. They're all going to be fighting each other again. And then the only addition is obviously John Jones coming in, who's going to have to fight someone. But then we've got, where does Blades go from here? Where does Volkov go from here? Where does Lewis go from here? The top 6 is just, they've all fought each other once. Where's the new blood? Where's the new blood coming in outside of the top 10? Prath, you're going to pick up some numbers here and just pick up some names, and some numbers next to them for me, right?
Yes, I am. Wow, it's like you're almost watching me look at these lists here. Are you? What are you doing around here, mate? All right, so numbers and fights that make sense in this division here, right? So Josh mentioned Cyril Garn, right? Cyril Garn is number 4 at the moment in the heavyweight division. I don't see him fighting Francis because of the kinship that they have. I believe that they're good friends, and that is what ultimately will stop these fights from happening in that sense. I really don't know where Cyril Garn goes from here now that his friend is the heavyweight champion of the world. Does he kind of set at the number 1 position and fend everybody off for Francis and stop Francis from fighting any of these guys because Cyril Garn will be sitting at number 1, beating everybody else up? So that's interesting. You got Curtis Blades out there, obviously taking the loss against Derrick Lewis. Volkov is also sitting out there with a big win over Alistair Overeem.
Yep.
Rosenstrike's out there as well. I don't know who did Rosenstrike fight last. Oh, he fought Garn, right? He fought Garn and lost to Garn.
It was a bit of a snooze fest, wasn't it? Well, it was a chess match between the two lads, but they were both just moving pawns backwards and forwards. It was just kind of a cruise win that we weren't really expecting.
So we've got 2 options here. So what I'm thinking is we look at Cyril Garn versus Curtis Blades. Even though Curtis Blades is coming off of a loss, that's still a big-ish name in that division, propels him forward. The only other fight apart from that is Derrick Lewis or Stipe Miocic. I don't think Stipe fights a Cyril Garn. I think Stipe, as much as I want to see him retire at these, he's taken, he doesn't have anything to prove, right? He's won the heavyweight title. He beat, some of the widely regarded best heavyweights of all time, Verdum and Overeem and JDS, the real superheroes of yesteryear in the MMA, in these MMA promotions. I don't see him fighting a Cyril Garn. I don't see him fighting an Alexander Volkov, who are, young and surging. So I think Cyril Garn either fights Curtis Blade or fights Alexander Volkov. And that will likely produce a number 1 contender / Cyril Garn, again, sitting at the top of the division, looking down at everybody else going, you're not going to fight my guy. the other thing we see here is Derrick Lewis versus Francis is obviously a little bit of a given here in terms of, I don't see Francis fighting Cyril. I don't see Francis fighting Alexander Volkov. I don't think that Alexander Volkov necessarily deserves a shot at the title just coming off of a win over Overeem. I think he needs another big name on his record. Potentially, we're looking at Volkov versus Curtis Blades, potentially. I don't know if that's a rematch, but that's also another good fight that could potentially propel Volkov into a title fight. But man, the top of this division is very, very, it's stuck. It's stuck in place. And you mentioned it correctly. It's a lot of rematches that we're going to see here. Either the rematches or the trilogies of a lot of these fights are going to happen. That's about it, man. I can't think of anything else I want to say here. Everybody else in the division, I feel like are working their way up. You've got some great prospects at the bottom half of the division that are just waiting to have that next big fight, right? You got Chris Dorcas, you got Tom Aspinall. I think Tom Aspinall is a real good prospect from us over here. And it's someone that we want to see strive and do well. But I think that is also ultimately going to take very good matchmaking for him to get up to where we want him to be in the heavyweight division. But I think, a Chris Dorcas or a Tom Aspinall could fight a, number 7, Shamil Abdurrahimov, or number 8, Walt Harris, or number 6, Jairzinho Rosenstrike. And if they don't get the win, it's them against a big fighter that can eventually propel them forward into these other bigger fights against a Volkov or a Garn or a Derrick Lewis or a Curtis Blades. I'm actually interested in your guys' opinion. We've watched the first Francis Ngannou versus Derrick Lewis fight, and it was close. It was a decision win to Derrick Lewis. I think he threw 5 shots and Francis threw 3, so that's why they gave Derrick the win. But in the rematch, who do you guys think actually takes that? We've seen the improvements from both guys as well. I think Francis has showed us, a completely different fighter. And I think Derrick, coming off of that confidence of having that knockout win against a wrestler where he knocked him out in the wrestling transition, I think will really boost his confidence.
Go ahead, Josh. What do you think, man?
With Lewis on the Ngannou rematch, I'd go Ngannou. I think it's hard to look at last fight and kind of bet against him, really. Even a Jones, But yeah, I just see, the thing is, for me, Lewis, I never really rated him that much. I kind of felt like he was a kind of like an old Ngannou, kind of like a one-punch type thing. But when you look at the fighters he's fought and the fighters he's beat, shall I say, you look at Volkov, yeah, fair enough, he was getting beat up until a 10-second punch, but you still got to land it, you still got to throw it, even the last fight against Curtis Blades, I had Blades winning that. And it's weird. Lewis actually said that he actually wanted Blades to stand with him. He said he actually didn't mind if he wrestled, which I found quite intriguing. But yeah, I don't see anybody being Ngannou, to be completely honest. I just, who can you actually confidently put up against him and say, right, I actually think he might win? Because for me, there's no one. If there had to be someone, it would probably be either Jones or Stipe. But after what he's already done to Stipe, last night, and Jones hasn't even had a fight at heavyweight yet. We don't know if he's going to even be good at heavyweight. So yeah, I'd go Ngannou. I think he stops him as well. I think he stops him. I'd go second or third round stoppage, but I'd go Ngannou.
I agree, man. The Ngannou that we saw yesterday, obviously, this happens every time. As soon as we have a win and a big win on a Saturday night, everyone on a Sunday is going, wow, this person's the greatest of all time. It happens every single week. We always talk about this. And, last week we had Adrian Yanez was the greatest of all time because of his knockout. And,
it was good, man.
All the time. But for this very moment, the Francis that we saw yesterday was very, very composed. He was very patient. He took that punch from Stipe, obviously caught him with a beautiful little check hook on the way in as well. And it wasn't a long punch. Do you know what I mean? It was a very, very short, quick, kind of snapping punch. And his hands looked fantastic. Kicks looked fantastic. I didn't think he was gassed at any point as well. Obviously, he was talking about the training and the training camp that he'd had with Usman and his cardiovascular endurance that he'd adapted as well. And I think I was looking at some pictures from his kind of UFC debut and his first couple of fights to where he is now, and you can see that he's not lost muscle mass, but if you look at the very, very smaller details, his muscles have gotten smaller but tighter, if that makes sense. When you look at bodybuilders, they've got huge puffed up muscles and they have no cardiovascular endurance. You can see that because they're not out there for cardiovascular endurance. They're out there to look good and look symmetrical. Whereas Francis yesterday, he looked, his shoulders, for instance, they looked a little bit smaller, a little bit tighter. So you can see that he's training different muscles and he's approaching it in a different way. And he's obviously spending a bit of time on the Aerodyne bike, which we know, I don't know about you, Prath, but I've spent a lot of time on the Aerodyne bike and it's not fun, but that will give you a massive, massive boost of cardiovascular endurance. I see him being very patient in the next Lewis fight. He used the first round yesterday against Stipe to be very patient as well and feel him out and then unload. I see Francis taking this as well, man. I see him beating the whole top five, if I'm honest. I see him, even if he has to, I think it would be unfair at the moment to match up Cyril Garn versus Francis Ngannou. Even if they're friends, not friends, whatever, I think it would be very unfair to put Cyril Garn, who's only had 9 fights, I believe, against someone with so much experience like Francis Ngannou. But Prath, what do you think, man? What do you think about that rematch for those two guys?
I agree with both of you. I think Francis showed yesterday that even if he can get into himself mentally and potentially have that second snooze fest fight with Derrick Lewis, is that I think that he has really learned how to reevaluate himself and be better every single time. I wouldn't say there's a giant improvement between his fights with Jairzinho and Stipe. Jairzinho was like 30 seconds long, and then Stipe, it was like we were watching a completely different fighter. And I think that is something that we've got to really take into consideration here, is that we're dealing with a completely different animal. I think from the fights that he was having before against, Cain Velasquez and JDS and Jairzinho, we didn't have enough information about Francis to make this educated guess around how good his adjustments would be, because each of those fights have lasted a minute. Jairzinho lasted 20 seconds, Junior lasted 1 minute, Cain lasted 26 seconds. Like, we can't see Francis doing what he did against Stipe against any of these other guys because they just haven't lasted that long enough. And I think Derrick has a hell of a chin on him, so I think he can absorb a couple of these shots. But does he beat Francis even over a 5-round decision? I don't think so. I think Francis has got the tools here that even if he wanted to go 5 rounds with him, he can make those adjustments round on round on round. And he looks like he'd be able to outpace Derrick Lewis. I think my grandmother could probably outpace Derrick Lewis at this point. God bless him, but he's a big fella, isn't he? And unfortunately for him as well, he doesn't seem to last more than two to 3 rounds in most of these circumstances. So Francis all day, man.
I completely agree, man. I completely agree. And it's going to be very exciting to see how the rest of the year plays out. Some huge fights. Obviously, Dustin Poirier mentioned, I believe yesterday on Twitter, that the 10th of July is probably going to be the trilogy for him and Conor McGregor, which is going to be very much the way the second fight went, but that will be a different episode. Josh, thank you so much for jumping on. If people want to find Josh on social media, what's your handle, Josh?
It's Joe Stopper 23, so it's just a J-O and then Stopper 23.
There you go. You can find him over there. Thank you very much for joining into the Fight and Talk 2 channel. It's always great to have people on as well, and thank you for everyone to watching, listening, etc. However you're getting us, we're on Spotify, we're on Apple Music, we're on Google Podcasts, and all of those glorious things, as well as YouTube. So if you do like the video, hit like, hit subscribe. It means the world to us. We love watching the numbers go up as well, and we love producing content. And if you want to get yourself one of the Fight and Talk hats, I'll put the link in the description below. I've always wanted to say that. I don't know why. It just sounds proper cheesy. I will put
proper YouTuber, mate. Proper YouTuber. Smash that subscribe button, guys, please.
Exactly. Like, share, comment, and subscribe.
And if you do like
No,
the
but
show,
seriously do that.
that's
Beautiful.
it, yeah. And if you do, tell your mothers, brothers, aunties, sisters, cousins, dog walkers, uncle. There you go. Tell everyone. But
Spread the word.
joining into the show, and
Ah,
Josh for joining. Prath, thank you as always, the eloquent analyst. And we don't have any fights next weekend, but we will be producing a little bit of topical content over the next coming days and airing that as well. And then obviously the week after that, we have Till versus Vittori, which we're going to be breaking down next week, I believe. So watch out for that. Thank you very much for joining in, and we'll see you next time.